Senator John Hoffman is kind enough to join us. He is our Democrat of the day, looking to go back to St. Paul for another term. He's kind enough to take some time to talk about his re-election campaign, as well as also the things going on in the Senate. Senator, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
It's always awesome to be on your show, Matt, and I think given the fact that I heard Patrick say it's 94 or 95 degrees tomorrow, perhaps the individual that they're looking for in Duluth, you have a picture of that person on your blog. That's your Matt McNeil blog. I think they found the Sasquatch in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Got to be it. It's got to be it, right?
It wasn't me. I mean, it's seriously, smart money. It's 50-50 when someone from the station staff. But it wasn't me this time. I had just come back from vacation. We hosted my wife's family, for goodness sakes. Senator, if you don't mind, I'd love to go back and look at the Senate session that, well, kind of still is, because we have these, with the emergency powers, we have the special sessions that are automatically called. But, you know, one of the things that has become apparent is that you are in a Senate, even though the Republicans have a slim majority. I'll never forget the guy that wrote the Alex Smith, emergency insulin bill, Dr. Scott Jensen, the Republican who came up with this bill, and it was a good bill, basically getting in line with the Republicans because their politics mattered more than anything else. It really has been disheartening to see that they're definitely not looking out for the betterment of the Minnesota people, but as well, everything that they do just seems to be pushing their own personal agenda.
It's ultimately now there's a court challenge on this bill. The big pharmaceutical people have stepped into line, which is absolutely sad, because you remember, let's go back a year ago when they started the conversation. There was a bipartisan conversation that was started, and it was a senator from Lakeville, Matt Little, Democrat, and a senator from Coon Rapids, Anoka Ramsey area, Jim Abler, is a Republican. And, I don't know how, when your intent is to get some good policy, that all of a sudden it gets mixed up in the muck. And, we've tried like hell to keep the muck out of politics. Matter of fact, I remember years ago, Matt, when Jim Ramstad, said quite loudly, look, in health and human services and education, you got to leave your ego out in the hallway and quit talking partisan politics here. This is a discussion that has to deal with the individuals that we're supposed to be providing services for. And he was talking about Minnesota. And it's like, you try to keep that. And speaking of 50-50, Matt, I've lived in this Senate district for 20 years, and it is still the last remaining 50-50 district in the state of Minnesota. It is the swing district of all swing districts. So there's your 50-50 right at you.
Well, and this is one of the reasons why I want to have you on the air. We need to keep you in the Minnesota Senate as a DFLer, and it's a district that is always going to be targeted here. I mean, the wish list for the Republicans is your district, Edina, Woodbury. They go after the wealthier districts, as well as that one or two that they might be able to come out in there and win. So we need to make sure that the DFL holds Senate District 36. When you look at that district, and you're talking about Ramstad, Jim Ramstad got run out of the Republican Party because even though, and I mean, I used to understand, I might not have agreed with Reagan-era Republicans. I understood them, at least, not the crew that we've got now, where you could have a bill. I mean, the Emergency Insulin Act was just the consummate example of it. This is a bill. People are out there suffering, not because of any fault of their own. They're working their cabooses off. They cannot afford the drug. The state has an obligation to go in there and help, and they just could not do it. It just, everything has to be politics. When the miners up in the Iron Range, we had that unemployment fund that needed, it existed to extend out unemployment benefits for the miners, and the Republicans were holding that up. I mean, they can't, out of the goodness of their heart, just do what needs to be done anymore. This really has become, I mean, you talk about 50-50, but the reality is that I've never seen politics so polarized, and I can't ever remember a time historically that the country has been so polarized when it comes to politics.
Yeah, it's really sad. I think that was about in 2015 when Senator Tomassoni brought it, and it wasn't just the Republicans that were holding that thing up. There were some people that I don't understand that part of it either, where it became a partisan bickering thing, and it clearly showed a divide in state politics in 2015. And I don't like that. I mean, I'll never forget, Matt, the first door I knocked in 2012 when I was mad that the current senator, was a right to work guy, and here I am with a union background and base, and I'm on the Anoka Hennepin School Board, and I'm borrowing money from one of the banks. I almost said who it was, but one of the banks, in order to keep our doors open. And this was already people's taxpayer money. And I'll never forget the first door I knocked on. As a gentleman said, "I don't care what party you're from. Will you please stop bickering and finger pointing and get some work done?" And that, to me, is such a verbal reminder and a visual reminder, because I know exactly where I was standing and at what door and at what house. And that's why when you look, I got 91.25% of all my bills are bipartisan, Matt, and that's what this district is requested, is that, quit finger pointing, get some work done. And that's what we did. It was a bipartisan effort to get the Armstrong Bridge, to get the Mill Pond, to get the dam on the Mississippi River, to get Hanson Boulevard. Those fixes, even on Highway 101 or 169 and 101st Street for Brooklyn Park, that took setting aside some political bickering and getting some work done. And then aside from that, 100% of the bills that I've had that have become law, 100% of them have been bipartisan. So it can be done, Matt. I think it can be done, because that's what people want. If you focus your energy on working across what's good for the district and what's good for the state, I think you can set that bickering aside.
It does help that you have a record of picking up what I would consider to be kind of no-brainer causes that are, these are good ideas. And it's very hard. I mean, like I said, it was sickening to watch Jensen, who was a co-author of that bill. That was his baby, to vote against it because, that was a no-brainer. But, if you pick up no-brainer policy issues, they generally have a tendency of going forward. Let's talk a little bit about, in the day here of that we are living in, this coronavirus age, basically there's been some failures. The disability providers, they have not been able to get the funds. We've got the governor today addressing daycare workers, which is good. But when you talk about people that are helping out, providing for people with disabilities with needs in that level, there is still a massive failure when it comes to funding and programs that, as we're once again in this age of coronavirus, definitely needs to be addressed at this point.
35 other states. Thank you for bringing that up, because that clearly, we sent a message a week ago with a 67-0 vote on the Senate floor. You talk about a bipartisan agreement. We sent that a bill that would have allowed some grants for organizations. And it's not just adult day providers or day providers, but it was also non-emergency medical transportation providers of kids with autism, like the Fraser Center. The Fraser Center has been there forever. They're going to close their doors because they can't get any help. And then finally, some of the early intervention services, the EIDB work that is done with little kiddos that live with autism. Here's the thing: 35 states, including then 36 if you include the District of Columbia, all went to the Centers for Medicaid Services and said, "Hey, we need some flexibility on our funding and waivers." And the Fed said, "Sure, not only can you use our money and the state money, because remember, in Medicaid funding, for every dollar you and I put on the table from a state, specifically Minnesota, the Feds matched that buck, right?" And the Feds gave permission for 36 states, including the District of Columbia, to utilize that state federal match. Minnesota did not do that. Matter of fact, they left $42 million on the table, state money that they put to the bottom line, which meant they lost another $42 million from the Feds. So $84 million that would have gone to some of these providers of disability services are actually gone. You can't get it back. It's just gone. And so we've absolutely tried. And there's a song that keeps coming into mind. Ronnie James Dio, "The Last in Line," and that's just perpetually going in my head. Why is it that people with disabilities and are most vulnerable are always the last in line when it comes to anything, regardless? And this can go back to every administration across the board, and it's just sad. It's really sad for that because that's not what Minnesota's about.
It is, but as well, your heart's in the right place. I know your heart's in the right place, and you are putting the people of need in at the front of the line. But you got people out there that, once again, that their whole goal is to, can we get a tax break first? And if that's your mindset, if we can get a bailout to the corporations or the millionaires or the billionaires first, well, that's where all the money goes, and then they can say, oh, well, we don't have any money left. Well, you got to prioritize, and this is one of the reasons why we got to get you back for another term, is because I believe in having a true DFL party that's got a wide, berth there, that you can have progressives and you can have moderates in the party. But the reality is even the moderates are getting phased out, whether it's through local Republicans or, stuck with federal, rules that basically hinder you. We need to have the DFL in charge, because then we can get that real vibrant policy out there, and holding your seat is such an important element of that.
Ken Martin always talks about that, Matt. You're absolutely right, which is, we are the big tent. We're the party of Walter Mondale, Hubert Humphrey. We're the party of Paul Wellstone. We're the big tent party. We should and can never forget that. And so, that's what Ken Martin has done a really good job on, is saying we are a big tent party. And it's evident. I mean, you have a socialist Democrat running for a Senate seat in Minneapolis. I love it. I mean, all of a sudden this young man comes out of school and believes in serving in housing policy, and he's coming out with a very, very aggressive agenda, and he got endorsed in the convention, and you look at that and you go, that's a huge tent, and I'm glad to see that happening. So I think that's just what we need to be doing, and not lose sight of what our constituents have asked for. So
go ahead.
And I've learned a lot, Matt. I've learned a lot in the last 4 years, and that's one of the things that I cannot get away from. There is still stuff left on the table, and one is, for example, our culture of hiring people with disabilities in state government is absolutely abysmal. And we did an investigation that led into looking at the program called the Connect 700. And the intent of that program was absolutely beautiful, wonderful. Mark Dayton did an awesome job. I mean, you talk about, taking it and saying, let's increase the people with disabilities working in state government. We're going to do this, right? Well, what we found is that there is no consistency from agency to agency. And the bad thing about COVID is we had really good buy-in from administration to really look at how we could do a better job, especially deliverables on this, right? We had a gentleman who, the author of the ADA and the author of early childhood interventions nationally, Bobby Silverstein. If you go and Google his name, you find out just some of the work that he's done as a lawyer. He was this amazing person, still is, willing to help the state of Minnesota. And he even did the work on looking at the content of this Connect 700 and seven deliverables that are looked at in these policies. We actually hit them. It was just managing that we needed help on. And that was one of the things that I cannot leave on the table, because no one else is going to pick it up. And I want to come back and make sure that is a correct thing that needs to be done. Chris Sears from the Star Tribune did articles on the Connect 700. And so I think that's something we need to do. We need to get the long-term aging fix. That's there. We started that conversation, Matt, and of course, it's the first time in history you have more people 65 and older than you do in K-12 education. There's going to be this balancing issue that's going to be coming for us, and just the medical assistance need goes from $1.5 billion to $3 billion just on that aging population, and so there's stuff on the table. I really need to be there because I believe that as been somebody who's been vocal for those populations, that I still need to be there. And one more thing, and then I know you keep going. We still have to fix our Mississippi River. We still have to fix some of our clean water initiatives in the state, and also increase our cleaner energy. We got the industries going in the right directions. We just need to ramp it up a little bit more, and I think it's there that's going to be, because that absolutely supports economic development for our state, and we proved it.
Well, and you talk about clean energy. Clean energy is really everyone's starting to walk away from the other stuff. I mean, from the fossil fuels, and really are looking at the clean energy more. Now it's time for us to be on the forefront of that, not be trailing behind.
Correct. And, it's interesting because, you talk to like Connexus Energy, and they're actually going to get a little bit more aggressive on their solar work because their constituency, the people that are buying energy from them, are asking them as a business to do that. And so you're right. You're seeing more and more people, moving toward that and away from those carbon places that just fill carbon into the air. So.
It's antiquated for sure. John Hoffman, MN.com. That's John, John, Hoffman, Hoffman, MN.com. That's the webpage we want to drive people to. You're, of course, obviously going to have volunteer donation opportunities. You got a fundraiser you're doing here on July 15th, right?
Absolutely. It's a virtual event. We're going to do a little bit of, set some drums up, have a little bit of live music, and record and do a live, John Hoffman live, and that's going to be done on July 15th. And it should be fun. I mean, it's a first at it, and we're using a different format than anybody else has done, but it's right there. When you go to my website, johnhoffmanmn.com, you can see what that's about. Get registered, get on it, and we're going to have some fun. Matter of fact, the MC of the event is a friend of mine from my college days, Tom Whaley, who is one of the owners of the St. Paul Saints. Mm-hmm. And he's absolutely a hoot, man. I don't know if you've seen him MC, but we're going to MC, and then I'm going to have my drums set up. I'm going to try and get a few of my old band members to show up, and we'll do some music maybe beforehand and after as well. So it'll be good.
JohnHoffmanMN.com, JohnHoffmanMN.com, the 36th district for the Senate. Now, once again, to everyone out there, if you are in a relatively safe metro district, great. Still help out your local House member, your local senator, but this is a DFL seat. Republicans are going to target it. They definitely want it. And so we need to hold this seat for the DFL. John Hoffman, senator from Senate District 36. Senator, I appreciate the time today. All my best to you, and we'll get everything posted online for everyone so everyone can find the information they need, okay?
Always great talking to you, Matt. Keep up the great work, and go find Sasquatch up in Duluth.